I'm Kristen May. I may look all grown up, but I'm a big kid at heart. I love to make people laugh. And as a comedian, I know that without proper planning, things can go wrong. When it comes to hazards in our community, being ready is even more important. On Hazard, we're going to show you how to make preparing for disaster look so easy, even a big kid can do it. Stay tuned. This is Hazard. Do you like riddles? What about this one? What can fill a room and fit in your hand will sometimes float but always fall and can appear out of or vanish into thin air? Give up? Water. Yes, good old H2O, our fair weather friend. You know, like the friend who's tons of fun.
Oh yeah.
But sometimes can be a bit dramatic. And of course, the foundation of any good relationship is setting good boundaries. All right, water. You stay on that side, I'll stay over here, and we'll get along just great. Yeah, well, our relationship with water really doesn't work out that way. Our boundaries sort of overlap, you could say. When water and property collide, the results can be devastating. But despite the risk, almost half of America's population lives on the shore. For centuries, we've tried to bend water to our will, but some building solutions have actually put people into harm's way. Technology has changed, as well as the understanding of what it means to live waterside. Though some old questions remain. Is it safe? Is it worth the cost? Or are we out of bounds? Stick with us. This is Hazard. So flooding is pretty complex. To understand it, you have to know hydrology, oceanography, meteorology, other ologies, but I want to make it really easy for you to understand. So I brought my friends along to help explain. You see, there are many types of flooding: glacial flooding, flash flooding, storm surge, sewer flooding. But for all the different types of flooding, the result is the same: the accumulation of too much water in too little time in a specific area, typically one that is normally dry land. Where the water gathers determines if a particular flood will have a lasting impact. As surprising and devastating as major flood events can be, water's movement is rather predictable. It's completely governed by a simple principle: water always flows downhill. I know I shouldn't expect water to change, but sometimes I just wish he would try, you know? Remember the water cycle? Think elementary school science. The law of gravity rules that precipitation is going to naturally try to return to the lowest point. When it can't move any farther, it puddles, or in some cases pools. If that lowest point is a road on your way to work, or your favorite restaurant, that can prove pretty inconvenient. My therapist says to be more accepting of water's ways. But this is ridiculous! I'm gonna go. Respecting water's natural flow and engineering smarter communities capable of dealing with major flooding is key to building a resilient society.
And how does that make you feel?
Flooded. Emotionally, that is. Yeah, I'm talking about you. You say something? And nowhere is smart water management more important than in the floodplain. You can think of it as our first frontier. A floodplain is a low-lying area adjacent to a body of water that floods from time to time. It consists of two parts: the floodway, which is the main channel of the water body and some of the adjacent land that carries the deepest, fastest moving water. The entire floodway is not always covered with water. The flood fringe is the area that extends from the outer edges of the floodway. It's important to differentiate between coastal and riverine floodplains. The water in coastal floodplains follow a predictable tide cycle, except when major storm events push more water onshore. Riverine floodplains typically flood in the spring or after major rain events. Floodplains slow floodwaters by providing space for an influx of water to hang out until it can infiltrate into the groundwater table or slowly return to the stream. If floodplains are filled with infrastructure or compacted dirt, it blocks water's flow, which causes the impacts from flooding events to be more major or costly. As people stake their claim to more and more swaths of land, we increasingly encroach on water's established territory. It's a complex issue, but what you should know is that city planners now have a bigger toolbox for the job. Modern communities can implement a variety of strategies to make citizens safer and protect property. The work is ongoing, but smart floodplain management is changing what a modern waterfront looks like, and it will transform the way people live. That's with water, instead of in it. This is Hazard.
This barricade is here for a reason. This barricade is here because what's behind it will kill you. Barricades, don't move them, don't drive around them, don't die. Turn around, don't drown.
Floodplains are supposed to flood, but increased flooding can occur for one of four reasons, or a combination of: precipitation and runoff, storm surge, urbanization, and sea level rise. We will discuss sea level rise in a future episode. The National Weather Service says precipitation and snowmelt are the #1 causes of flooding. In 2011, Tropical Storm Lee stalled over Pennsylvania, causing an overflow of creeks and rivers, including the Susquehanna, which crested at a near record of 32.75 feet. 15 people lost their lives, and more than 1,000 homes and businesses were destroyed, costing more than $2 billion. When offshore storms push water up on land, this is called storm surge. The storm surge of Hurricane Katrina that hit the Gulf Coast in 2005 was estimated as high as 20 to 30 feet in portions of Biloxi and Gulfport. The surge was partly to blame for the levee breaks that deluged New Orleans. And irresponsible urbanization contributes to problems with runoff, debris, and drainage, which all can cause increased flooding. Atlanta's urban story is a good example. Atlanta's Old Fourth Ward is best recognized as the birthplace of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., but to civil engineers, it is a well-known cautionary flood tale. In the late 20th century and into the 21st, the area struggled with problems related to growth and development. The area is part of the Clear Creek Basin, downstream of the Chattahoochee River. Parking lots and other paved surfaces covered acres of land that lay above natural springs. Serious, regular flooding threatened historic buildings and stopped further development. The city of Atlanta was looking at spending tens of millions to try and divert the water underground. For another example of the negative impact of urbanization, we go to Washington State. In the first half of the 20th century, farmers in the Puget Sound area settled in the Puyallup floodplain. They built levees to protect their fields from frequent flooding. A levee is a wall built to prevent the overflow of a river. The Puyallup levees confined one section of river, but ended up pushing the water downstream at a greater height and velocity than would normally flow. The assumed flood protection afforded by the levee system encouraged more development upstream, which inevitably caused even greater runoff, erosion, and flows. Over half a century, the area saw loss of aquatic habitat, degradation of the river channel, and repeated property loss due to flooding, made worse in some cases by this levee system. It was not until the early 2000s, after 15 declared disasters due to major flooding, when leaders recognized they needed to rethink the way they managed the environment. So it seems obvious, right? Don't build at water's edge. But people also put clothes on cats, so they're gonna do what they're gonna do. For decades, leaders believed they could construct their way to safety, but storm surge and exceptional precipitation tested the boundaries of water like never before. Change was on the horizon. Next, we'll discuss how the problems in Atlanta and the Puget Sound became the basis for floodplain best practices and how it took an act of Congress to encourage new ideas in communities across the country. Stay tuned.
See on page 4 that the projections need to be flood next Thursday?
Seriously? Thursday? Can't do that.
This is really inconvenient.
I have yoga that day.
I have no time for this.
So,
I can't do Thursday, but I can do Friday.
Disasters don't plan ahead. You can. Talk to your loved ones about how you're going to be ready in an emergency. Don't wait. Communicate.
Last century, people experienced devastating flooding events, which resulted in substantial loss of life and property damage. To mitigate, government tried to control the water, relying heavily on major infrastructure like dams and levees. According to FEMA, billions were spent in these types of investments. Even this wasn't enough. In 1927, the levee-guided Mississippi River succumbed to unusually high amounts of rainfall, flooding nearly 13 acres of land. More than 700,000 people were left homeless, and property damage exceeded $236 million. The disaster forced the U.S. government to recognize for the first time that levees alone cannot be used to control flooding. The cost of disaster assistance for flood victims continued to increase, and in 1929, the private flood insurance industry abandoned the coverage of flood losses. In 1936, after declaring flood disasters a menace to national welfare, Congress enacted the Flood Control Act of 1936. The legislation marked the official start of a national flood control program. Over the next 3 decades, leaders tried to get a handle on how to regulate building in the floodplain, as well as how to assist disaster victims. In 1968, Congress passed the National Flood Insurance Program, or NFIP, and funded it through FEMA. A new chapter in the saga was about to begin.
NFIP presents Kristen and H2O in Living with Water! To have a happy home with water, there are a few things you should keep in mind. Be thoughtful and giving. Try and have fun, even with chores. Try new things. And don't do things you'll later regret. Follow this smart advice to have a happy home with water.
The NFIP, the champion for a water-weary nation, or so they hoped. It did 3 things: made flood insurance affordable and available for purchase by subsidizing insurance funds with tax money, mandated the creation and maintenance of flood insurance rate maps, which determine premium rates based on flood zones, and it deterred development in flood-prone areas and established minimum standards for floodplain management required for communities to be eligible for federal insurance funds. The passage of this act symbolized the beginning of a whole new mindset about flooding. It served to shore up the insurance market and better serve flood disaster victims, but that was only half the equation. Leaders wanted to avoid disaster. It was obvious that redirecting floodwaters was not a perfect solution. If communities could be built or retrofitted to more safely live near water, then less funding would be needed to clean up disasters. Marking flood-sensitive areas for non-development helped to dodge future problems. This preemptive method became a major part of the insurance program. The differences in floodplains from coast to coast were exceptional, and it couldn't be managed solely from Washington, D.C. And so, the floodplain manager became the local frontman for the NFIP.
The overarching intent of all of the regulations coming from FEMA are to reduce flood damage and to keep people out of harm's way.
So it gives us a standard or a baseline to be able to regulate to, so communities can go above and beyond that, but it gives us a minimum so we know that everyone is protected at least to this amount. Ways that you can go above the base flood elevation is adding a freeboard. That is very important when we have topics like sea level rise come up, or we know that the infrastructure is going to be around for a long time, like a hospital, and it's very hard to elevate a hospital once the flood maps change. Going above that minimum standard really gives that level of protection that that specific community needs.
FEMA's regulations are written in a way to cover the entire country. There are a lot of different types of flood hazards around the United States and a lot of different ways of addressing those flood hazards. While the baseline FEMA regulations cover the country generally and cover those hazards generally, it's up to each community to understand and regulate the hazards that are the greatest priority for that community and to tailor the regulations to the specific economic and social circumstances of that community.
Floodplain management means different things in different parts of the country, but whether on the Ohio River or the Atlantic Ocean, NFIP cities have someone to manage the ins and outs of development near water. We already learned that government laid out the rules for communities to follow to get money for national insurance coverage. The floodplain manager must maintain up-to-date firms and map data, identify and record properties that have had major flood damage multiple times, and issue permits for structures in floodplains based on the rules. This proactive strategy for building in floodplains was aimed at keeping people out of harm's way. Let me bring in my friends again to help explain what happens when you're caught in a floodplain unaware. Okay, not really. Let's find out what it means to be a floodplain manager. We'll be right back. No Legos were harmed during the making of this video.
Floodplain managers kind of straddle between planning and zoning, stormwater management, building inspections. We are constantly trying to keep all of the internal components of our jurisdictions on the same page in terms of floodplain management and flood design standards.
So when you talk about the community itself, how do they know how to coordinate and organize that?
You can't push your water onto someone else. The city of Charleston, town of Mount Pleasant, city of North Charleston, all have different regulations. It is very important for communities to speak to each other, what they're putting into their regulations to make sure they don't contradict each other. It really makes it so we have to communicate and we know if there are higher standards or different standards that we have to account for.
If different communities have drastically different standards, it can really create problems for developers, builders, but also the individual resident. If someone is looking to move to the Charleston area and there are drastically different requirements to the point where renovating a home, it would be significantly more expensive in one jurisdiction versus another, that's something really important for us to take into account. Probably one of our biggest tasks as floodplain managers, and one that might not even necessarily show up in our job descriptions, is helping people understand what floodplain management is, why they should care, and what it means for them individually. The NFIP allows all property owners to carry flood insurance, and in particular providing flood insurance in situations where a private insurance provider may not insure the property. Just because you're not in a high hazard flood zone doesn't mean that you don't qualify for the NFIP coverage and that you should ignore that. Everybody should explore the opportunity to carry NFIP coverage.
How can someone find their flood zone?
So there is the map service center that FEMA provides that shows all of the flood maps for every community. Most are digitized, some are not, but you should contact your local jurisdiction and they might have a user-friendly tool that they can help you look up your flood zone.
So floodplain managers, you two know a lot of things. How does someone become a floodplain manager like me?
Yeah, so there is a CFM exam, which is a Certified Floodplain Manager exam. There's not really one book or one course that prepares you for it. Basically just having on-the-job training and looking at examples, reviewing elevation certificates is the best way. And then you go and take an exam, and if you pass, you're a floodplain manager.
There is still a lot of opportunity for folks to get involved in their own communities to reduce flood hazards without going the route of becoming a certified floodplain manager.
Let's go back to Atlanta's 4th Ward. Remember, this is an urban center of Atlanta that sits above natural springs in the Clare Creek Basin. It was plagued by frequent flooding from stormwater runoff. Through an amazing public-private partnership, the area was transformed into a destination park with a 2-acre lake as its centerpiece. The beautiful lake serves as a stormwater detention basin, which helps deal with the excess stormwater runoff that would occur after major rain events. The project increased the sewer capacity of the surrounding area, which is important to be able to remove stormwater from the system. Streets were rerouted and various landscape and hardscape elements were added. It was cost-effective and minimized downstream flooding by allowing more infiltration of runoff. The project saved the city millions in infrastructure funds and spurred $2 billion worth of investment in the 6 blocks adjacent to the park. The approach was different on the Puget Sound. The management plan of the Puyallup floodplain included dredging of the river to remove the accumulation of sediments that would have spread out across the floodplain under natural conditions. The existing levees were relocated or removed to allow the river to follow more closely its original course. Farming practices were changed to have less environmental impact and natural habitats were restored. Houses were relocated and nearby roads moved. In Atlanta and the Puget Sound, floodplain management remains an active and ongoing part of city planning. Humans have made amazing innovations to harness the power of water, and rivers and oceans have been the catalyst for growth of some of the world's largest cities. But catastrophic loss has a humbling effect, and new strategies for growth and development have resulted. Floodplain managers in the 21st century use a holistic approach to water management, creating more cooperative relationship with our old friend water. This type of preparation and prevention in action will help us continue to triumph over disaster. This is Hazard. I know that in order to make this work, I have to give you your space. I can't control you. I hope that you learned something too. Do you have something to say? There's no talking to you. You're the worst listener ever. You never say anything when I'm talking. Hydrologic. This is Hazard. Kristen May, I may look all grown up, but I'm a big kid at heart. I love making people laugh. Can we just do that? I'll just sing the intro.
August 31st, 1886, a day that would forever change the landscape of the East Coast United States and continue to challenge everything we know about earthquakes. A massive 7.3 magnitude earthquake struck just outside of Charleston, South Carolina. From Chicago to Cuba, tremors rumbled. 60 people died, fires raged, buildings crumbled. Aftershocks lasted for weeks. It would be the largest earthquake ever recorded in this part of the country. Even now, more than 130 years later, the total damage by this quake can only be estimated, and it can happen again. Research conducted by the South Carolina Emergency Management Division indicates an earthquake like the one in 1886 would be the single largest disaster in the entire Southeast. Almost nothing would be safe. According to SCEMD, a large magnitude earthquake would kill at least 900 people and seriously injure 45,000 more. At least 125,000 people would be left instantly homeless. The damage to infrastructure, like bridges and water systems, would easily pass $25 billion. And it wouldn't be over. Dreaded aftershocks could be just as strong, doing more damage, putting more lives in danger. The economic impact from such a tragedy would be widespread, felt across the entire region, from Tennessee to Florida, and last for years to come. South Carolina normally experiences 10 to 20 low-magnitude earthquakes each year. Not one of them, even a big one, can ever be predicted. We don't know when the next major earthquake will happen in the Palmetto State. You need to be ready now to protect yourself and your family. First, review your insurance policies to make sure you're covered. You may not be. Do a home hazard hunt. Bolt heavy furniture to the walls. Secure your valuables in low cabinets. Most importantly, make sure you know what to do if the ground starts to shake. Drop, cover, and hold on. The Great Shakeout is a chance to get ready for earthquakes and more. Register today at shakeout.org. Practice until it becomes a reflex. Download the official South Carolina Earthquake Guide. Get the SC Emergency Manager mobile app. We won't know when the next big earthquake happens until it does. Preparing now will give you a chance to survive, and your community a chance to rebuild. Earthquakes. Have a plan. Make it personal. Brought to you by the South Carolina Emergency Management Division and the Federal Alliance for Safe Homes.